On that note, thank you very much for making the time
to happy to be here.
Come onto the podcast and talk about the Forward Fund.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah.
So let's start with, what is the Forward Fund? How did it come into being? What's the mission, the vision, and kind of the whole crux of what you guys are doing?
Sure. So the Forward Fund, like in a nutshell, we're an economic mobility engine. I would kind of tee us up in that way, and that we provide zero interest, really student-centered financing for short-term, high-yield training programs. So think short-term, low cost, but high ROI in terms of eventual wage gains.
Yep.
Our loan product that we partner with Ascent Funding on to kind of be the back end of the loan, essentially a zero interest, no fee, no minimum credit score required. So it's really opening up financing to folks that previously had no options, particularly for these short-term training programs like electric line work and CDL truck driving that require you to quit outside employment to be successful. But of course, you've still got expenses to pay particularly as an adult learner to go back and reskill for these careers.
Yeah. And so how did you guys land on this idea of, and when I first met you, I was like, wow, you guys started a bank, basically.
Essentially.
And offering interest-free loans for people to go and upskill themselves. How did this idea come about, and what was the catalyst behind it?
So at the time I was at Cape Fear Collective, and kind of coming towards the end of the first year of COVID, we commissioned an inclusive economy report and worked with a lot of different partners to kind of examine how upwardly mobile was our region or not. And essentially what we found was, particularly when it comes to wages, folks aren't as upwardly mobile. Like where you live, particularly in our region, and then even within the counties, really matters for your ability to kind of get out of poverty, particularly over generations.
Yep.
And so, at the time, there was a lot of discussion around social determinants of health. So childcare, transportation, your housing, your environment, all of that matters for your health and well-being. And that report really showed that the same social determinants of health really prevent upward education, upward mobility, and getting to a well-paying job. So we started thinking, what would it take to kind of invest in the social determinants of work and education being the same things that kind of prevent folks from well-being, housing, childcare, what have you.
Yep.
And so we just kind of started putting feelers out. What would it look like? At the time, we worked with a group out of Boston called Social Finance that was doing this work nationwide around this pay it forward fund type model, where one person takes a zero interest, really student-centered financing type loan, and then is repaid on outcomes, is basically repaid based on their success. And that repayment then supports the next person behind them. So we liked the model. We thought it could get some traction here. Pretty quickly raised about $4 million in private philanthropic support. And it was enough. And then the kind of the fundraising plus the support from the Cape Fear Collective board to kind of spin out to our own entity, which we are in the process of doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about the process of building, a business from scratch and doing it specifically with a nonprofit. I'm sure there's some more hoops that you have to jump through.
Yeah. Well, I do like to, nonprofits, yes. Nonprofit doesn't mean no profit, right? So we are very interested in having gains, particularly our repayments, go back in to support the mission.
Yep.
So it's not just like startups and other industries, and that you're building a team, you're building the infrastructure, you're partnering with folks like Capone and Associates to kind of get your ducks in the row. The added hurdle that you mentioned was us filing for our tax deduction status.
Yep.
Little crazy at the IRS these days. I'm sure with your work pretty well. So we actually submitted our application for nonprofit exemption in June of 2024, and it took 12 to 13 months to hear back, but we have met that hurdle. And so now continue to work with Cape Fear Collective and our respective boards. So the Forward Fund does have our own board set up now with some familiar faces, some shared missions, and the work that Cape Fear Collective is doing in terms of just upward mobility across the board.
Well, congratulations on finally getting that designation.
Yeah, that was, calling the IRS weekly is not fun for anybody, but we got there. Yeah.
So just to kind of recap, so the Forward Fund provides people with interest-free loans to go to like a Cape Fear Community College or other institution where they can get, a 4, 6, 8-week degree or technical certification in like a specified field,
Right.
so that they can then come back and, make
money.
Make some money.
I mean, bottom line, we want folks making more money,
Yeah.
not only for themselves, but to kind of lift up their entire families. So right now we are live. So our loan product is available at Cape Fear Community College for their electric line work and CDL truck driving programs.
Okay.
They happen to both be 10 weeks long. CDL offers a day and a night course. Electric line work is a day program, but these are like full-time, really robust programs. So that's
Right.
where our financing comes in. Right now, relatively low cost to enroll in these programs, right? In terms of where they sit within the college at Cape Fear Community College, you're not talking huge enrollment fees. However, you have to quit outside employment to be successful. So where our funding comes in really is housing, transportation, childcare in some cases, to kind of cover you, to provide a little bit of a net for your 10 weeks in the program. And then there's also a 3-month grace period post-graduation where you're not going to make any payments on the loan, and you actually remain in good standing deferment as long as you're making below $45,000. But we know from some of our research that entry-level salaries for these programs are $50,000 to $55,000. So if you graduate the program, there's really high job placement rate, which is part of our vetting of where we provide financing. So you're going to get a job, you're going to meet the minimum salary threshold, and those dollars are going to come back to us to then support the next cohort of students. We are also live as of today for those same programs at Fayetteville Tech and Durham Tech. Durham Tech does not have CDL, but they do have electric line work. And we're kind of vetting expansion at CFCC and at other programs. And when we look at expansion, we kind of deem high-performing programs those that have enrollment capacity. So we're talking a good number of students. You have high graduation, and most importantly for us is job placement. The caveat being job placement and family sustaining wages.
Right.
So we know there's a lot of urgency and job demand, for example, around like CNAs.
Yes.
We can't finance CNAs. I know how well they're needed and what a valuable resource they are in the healthcare community. The wages on the back end are not conducive to repayment. So for us, that's where we would love to work with partners to see scholarships and that type of model. So granted dollars go to those individuals, and our loan is better suited for folks that can repay.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a potentially another issue. It's, a CNA is such a critical part of our, life and well-being. And what we're saying is that the pay after you get the degree isn't enough to pay back an interest-free loan.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a couple red flags going up there.
It is, yeah. So for us, it's it's kind of like all of these stars need to align in terms of like the job demand, the job placements, the high wages, and the adequate short-term, high-performing training, right? We are open to kind of financing 2-year degrees, but those that are, again, like very specified to a specific job pathway that kind of meets those markers.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the loan pays for the program, but it also gives them some stipend or living money to cover expenses while they have to quit their job to go back to school.
So the beauty of our loan product, and again, we've partnered with Ascent Funding as kind of loan origination and loan servicing, but with them, we've been able to really customize a loan for the said training program. So the one we have live right now happens to work for electric line work and CDL truck driving because they're so similar in terms of time and cost.
Got it.
So the loan product we have available now, there's a minimum of $2,000, a maximum of $10,000. There's no minimum credit score required, no fee required. About 90% of our applicants that apply are getting approved for their loan. The caveat there is these are bank-backed loans, right? So if you're in active bankruptcy or if you have collections that exceed $15,000, that does exclude medical and student loan debt, you will not be eligible for one of our for our loan. But that's the loan we have now. As we look to longer-term programs, like basic law enforcement training or a licensed practical nurse, like those in the healthcare field especially, will tinker with that loan product to ensure that it covers all of the cost that someone needs to get by during the programs.
It's a really, really nice package.
Yeah. We've are coming up. As of this kind of being released, we will have done over 100 loans and over 900,000 in lending only since January. So it's taking off. That just shows it's like a catch-22, right? We're really glad we have this loan product available, but it does show how high the financial need is and the demand for some alternative to what currently exists in the financial aid space. Which is nothing really in terms of these short-term non-curriculum programs. We are pleased that Workforce Pell has just been passed, so there will be some financial aid coming next summer for these shorter-term credentialed programs that previously used to only exist kind of in traditional degree pathways. But it's not enough, right? And it's still interest-bearing. And so it shows that there's a demand for alternatives that kind of put some shared accountability back to the training provider, and that burden not just being solely on the student. Because for us, the training program needs to pay off, quite literally, for you to pay off your loan.
Literally.
Yeah.
So you mentioned credit score as one of the items or part of the process. If they repay this loan, is that also helping like increase their credit score?
Yeah, so we that was kind of one of our early design questions, is if we're going to report to credit bureaus, and we ultimately decided to do so because, to your point, if they repay the loan or if they're in good standing deferment, so say they never meet the minimum salary threshold of $45,000 for this loan case. I don't go to work, I have to take care of family, like whatever, I don't graduate, whatever the situation might be. If I don't meet that 45,000, I'm still in good standing deferment, and so my credit score is still going up through the duration of the loan repayment term, even though I'm not actively making payments. We obviously hope that's the exception, not the rule, but those that are repaying also, our partner in Ascent Funding is seeing credit score increases anywhere from 75 to 100 points over the course of the loan.
Yeah, it's to do a lot in this world. Your credit score is
absolutely. It's everything. It's everything. And anecdotally, so we're interested to see some data on this. Our loan today is really only going to folks that had already made the choice, right, to take on one of these programs. So you have to be enrolled with Cape Fear Community College before you can access our financing.
Okay.
And that will remain true. However, we would love to kind of spread awareness of this type of financing to younger and younger folks. So as they graduate, say, New Hanover High School, they can now have this option to, if they previously couldn't pay for our additional training, now they can because we exist. But just by nature of like having to be enrolled beforehand, we have this assumption that folks were making it work somehow, right? Because these cohorts are 50 people each. You're talking 250 line workers a year through Cape Fear Community College. Like folks are making it happen, and we have an assumption that they're making it happen on high interest credit cards or borrowing from a friend or not paying other debts to ensure that they can pay for school. And so providing not only the money, the cash up front to be able to pay for these expenses, but also that credit tool, we're hoping is just another upward mobility kind of factor along with the high wage gains. Yeah.
Well, it's also, kind of a way to kind of break the cycle of poverty, so to speak.
Exactly.
Because instead of just giving somebody money, you're empowering them.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's very little hand-holding, right? You've already made the decision to take on this training program. You have to quit outside employment. You're applying for a loan product that, yes, is student-friendly, but does ultimately need to get paid back. And in that repayment, to your point, can see credit scores increase along with your salaries being doubled is what we're seeing in early days.
Wow.
So our average borrower demographics right now, credit score is 587. So obviously no options for other financing with that type of credit. And pre-program incomes like just above 20,000. So even getting to the minimum salary threshold, right, you've doubled your annual income.
Yeah, and if you take your credit score from 587 to 687, that's like
a dream
really
scenario.
big.
Yeah.
That's a really...
And these aren't 30-year loans. We're talking 5-year repayment terms. As they increase, as loan volumes increase, that repayment term could raise.
Yeah.
But we're talking 5 to 7 year loans that virtually disappear at the end of the loan term versus, I mean, I'm 36 and, I have a lot of friends, and me myself just recently paid off student loans, right? So it's very much an alternative to the student debt crisis that we're seeing.
So how did you get into the nonprofit space?
Yeah, so I graduated from Appalachian, went back to Raleigh, which is where I grew up, and really got involved in government affairs. So I was doing some policy work and lobbying, and enjoyed that work. I did also a stint from there in corporate life at Duke Energy, and I was fortunate to be able to lead their workforce development for the state. So in that work was actually kind of on the back end, and as part of the Carolinas Energy Workforce Consortium that Duke Energy was a part of, to kind of develop what is the kind of updated training for electric line workers, and how can we consistently train line workers, not only for Duke Energy, but for all their contractor companies, utility partners. And so that really, I mean, Cape Fear Community College is one of those programs that was launched from a lot of that work. So in a lot of ways, this work has kind of come full circle. And when I moved to Wilmington, was connected with Natalie English at the Wilmington Chamber. And so was kind of similarly just really interested in like, how do I get back to kind of that nonprofit and get closer to the work, I think, in terms of some upward mobility.
Yeah. That's crazy how full circle it's come. Like you said, I mean, from like working at Duke and leadership development and to now helping people get a job where they'll potentially go and work for. Right.
When I was at Duke Energy, I remember the Cape Fear Community College program was just getting off the ground. Part of my role was trying to support Durham Tech in starting their program, and just in March went to the graduates of our first borrowers at CFCC's program, and we launched in July at Durham Tech. So that's amazing. It's very cool to, and I do, just kind of where this model really works is when you have like the buy-in from the employers and the education and training institutions, and then can layer our financing to support students, right? So I want to like give a shout out to the work that those employers, Duke Energy included, did to kind of really provide the foundational curriculum and then support the education and training institutions to go out and provide that for upwards of 1,500 students across the state every year to fill their specific talent needs. And we were actually a recipient of a Duke Energy Foundation grant to now and then support the students for their financial needs to enter the program.
It sounds like you have not had much trouble raising capital and raising money to start this venture. Yeah,
well, we've been incredibly blessed to be supported here locally. Again, I mentioned some of the kind of founders and initial donors at Cape Fear Collective were like really interested in seeing this model through and interested in financially backing what would be a pilot to then say, how can we bring in other funders? We were also a recipient of a $3 million gift grant from the New Hanover Community Endowment, which helped us not only in operations year one, but a dedicated kind of revolving loan source. So we do today, as of this podcast, have about $7 million committed over 5 years.
Fantastic.
I would say my personal goal is to get to 10 million like in this fiscal year. And then we do have one statewide program. So we've partnered with the NCAHEC, which is the Area for Health Education Centers. CHEC is here locally on their RN refresher program. So it previously unemployed or underemployed RNs kind of come back into the field and get back into work, which we know is a critical shortage. So with that, I say that's kind of our first statewide program. And so we're really interested, I think, in the next phase of fundraising and fund development, state and national funders to support the work, because we are North Carolina's first Pay It Forward fund.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been great.
So you mentioned there's 3 community colleges that the Forward Fund is partnered with as of this point, right?
Active, yes.
Active.
And then the NCAHEC RN Refresher Program statewide. So, and that's a slightly different loan product. That's a longer term program, asynchronous, kind of do on your own time. We have, again, an assumption that the bulk of our funds there are going to childcare so that folks can kind of focus on the online training, and then there's a clinical component that they need to be out of the house for. And we are looking at expansion not only geographically to other community colleges and other kind of eligible training programs, but also by industry and kind of job need as well. So looking at additional skilled trades, heavy equipment operators, construction licensed trades, but certainly would love to get into some healthcare fields as well.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the AHEC, is that specific for healthcare type?
It is, yeah. So
what type of jobs come out of, or what type of degrees or technical degrees come out of those programs?
So that one specifically is a RN refresher program, and so it's taking folks that had either worked in as an RN previously and have been out of the workforce. Sometimes an employer will say, I need you to go back and take your RN refresher course before you can come, say, work on a floor. Or if there was challenges with your licensure prior, you can take this course and refresh your license as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that's a big, specifically here locally, but I think is the gap in the healthcare,
absolutely,
specifically in the nursing.
Yeah, and
sector.
one of the things we're interested in working with UNCW and CFCC on is particularly coming on the heels of the endowment's gift around nurses specifically and the healthcare shortage. Where and how can we kind of supplement or sit next to, because that certainly brought in additional student support dollars. But if there are gaps and where those gaps may exist, it's potential that a zero interest loan from the Forward Fund could be an added benefit. So we're at the ready when that becomes a need.
Well, everything like the way that you started this and everything about it is such a cool, like, entrepreneurial journey.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, it really is. It's like a startup.
Yeah, very
a startup
much so.
bank that's focused on a positive community impact.
Yeah.
And you've had to wear a couple different hats, I'm sure, throughout the process.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Well, as you know, I'm a new mom, and it was funny. I was actually just last week. It was my first night away, and I had a panel in DC, and that moderator structured it as like the birth origin story, like young grades, and then like what's the grown-up Forward Fund look like. So that was cool. We kind of modeled it off that, and it really has been that type of journey. You know, just 18 months ago, we were kind of an idea on a sheet of paper that's gotten quite a bit of traction.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
What would you say, like, what's the most challenging aspect of going from an idea on paper to where we are today with almost 100 loans?
Yeah, so we've done over 100 loans, and we'll certainly be at $1 million in financing by the end of this calendar year. Challenges. I would say, like, moving from concept to reality, right? So we had a lot of theories, and we had, a theory of change, and we had some assumptions about where and how we could fit in the ecosystem to really, like, expedite economic mobility. Yeah. I think we've seen that in our early kind of repayments and just monitoring kind of our borrower demographic. But when I think about challenges, it's how not to lose this momentum. And how do we kind of go with our gut in terms of what we're seeing in the early data to know that we're making an impact, and to kind of have folks not be afraid to go first in terms of, like, what is the next lever to pull to kind of expedite this upward mobility track we have for folks. And this, I think our greatest risk is that we kind of lose yet another generation to really burdensome student debt. And low wage or kind of just continuous low wage employment, which isn't good for our business community or the individual. Yeah.
It's almost like you've taken on a really, not almost, you've taken on a really big responsibility. You've got an idea, you've put it together, it's happening, it's working, and now we got to keep it going.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. I think again, kind of, we projected about $375,000 in lending our first year and are closing in on $1 million, which again is a great problem to have, and that like the model's working and it's clearly getting into the hands of folks that need it. I think when I think about challenges, okay, now we've got to keep going. Particularly on a 5-year repayment term, we have this bridge we have to fill in terms of financing, right? Before this another like flow of dollars is going to come in.
Right.
Because it's zero interest, this is not an evergreen fund. There are some other pay it forward funds across the country that did a nominal interest rate in order to have it self-sustaining. And over time, we chose not to do that. That's not to say that will forever be the case for every loan product, but that does mean we have this gap to fill so that we don't have to kind of push the brakes to any of our current funding opportunities or financing for individuals. Yeah.
Well, I've had a chance to, get to know the Forward Fund, pretty well, and you guys have set up an extremely lean organization, in my opinion.
Thanks.
I mean, with the funding that you have, the impact that you're doing, and the way that you've set up, especially with the loan origination piece. I mean, it's you, Kevin, and Susie, right? It's 3 people.
Yeah.
So like, in everything you guys do and everything you've mentioned, it's like, every time I hear something, I just think high ROI, right? It's like from the trades that you've chosen, the timeline, to like the way you've set up the team, the way that you've organized the system. I mean, it's a great example of how to run a lean enterprise, I think.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think again, not back to the conversation of like nonprofits or just businesses in and of themselves. Like for every dollar we spend on operations, it's another dollar not going into student loans. So I think our team, especially in our board, is really cognizant of that. And I've tried to ensure that we choose the right partners that allow us to kind of like keep that operating and admin overhead as low as possible in order to kind of drive as much as we can into the student loans. Because again, we're all about people having more money in their pocket. So that means we need to kind of watch our bottom line as well as an organization. And we couldn't do it without some pretty incredible partners. So Ascent Funding is nationally doing zero interest lending. They're partnered with other impact partners like us at the Forward Fund, and just trying to provide an alternative in a really complicated and expensive space of student financing. So they're just there's a whole team behind them that we're working with every week. Yeah.
What are, we've talked about data and return on investment and all this. What are some of the KPIs or indicators that you've set up to really determine the impact that the organization has?
So some of our early ones, like looking just at our borrower demographic, like we want to make sure, because in terms of eligibility, the really only eligibility requirement is that you're enrolled in the program, right? We can't just give this loan to Meaghan walking down the street if she's not enrolled in one of these programs.
Right.
And the kind of collections piece, so I mentioned those 2 knockout criteria. So collections over $15,000 and active bankruptcy. Other than that, you're eligible for the program, right? So, or for our financing. So for us though, we want to make sure that because we have such a wide net in terms of eligibility, that we're actually serving those that like really need some additional financial boost to then see these huge gains afterwards in terms of the ROI. Right. So I say all that to say, like, we're really hitting the target with our borrower profile. Average credit score 587, pre-program income just over 20,000. We're also looking at the demographics of these programs specifically on the front end. For CDL truck driving, like average age I want to say is around 30. Very diverse in terms of race, and we do have some women in those programs. That's another reason we want to diversify in terms of our sector offerings. Is to provide more options for women or programs that women may be interested in. Electric line work skews a little younger. Average age is 26. Our average borrower right now is 30 as well. So we're looking in terms of KPIs at our borrower profile. Are we driving upward mobility for our borrowers? On the front end, we're looking at graduation from these programs overall, and then graduation from our borrowers. We're looking at particularly job placement rates and salary rates at the end. So not only if you're meeting that minimum salary threshold, but over time, the course of the repayment of the loan, we'd like to see your wages certainly hit 80% of the area median income, but grow from there.
Yeah, no, that's, so the repayment is triggered by having above a certain salary.
Yeah.
Was it 45,000?
For this loan product, yeah.
For this
so
loan.
we will, so for example, for our RN refresher program, the maximum loan size there is only 5,000.
Okay.
And a lot of those individuals say they regain their RN licensure and maybe they only work part-time. So our minimum salary threshold is designed to reflect part-time work at 30,000. As we go to longer term programs, higher wage, higher loan amounts, we'll kind of move those levers accordingly.
Got it.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other products or programs that you foresee as being needed? We've talked about some of the medical, the line workers, the CDL.
So we're actually, our team right now is working on basic law enforcement training, particularly with McDowell Community College and potentially also here at Cape Fear Community College. To us, again, the wages on the back end need to be at a place that are conducive to repayment, but beyond that are family sustaining wages, right? That's really our driving force of where we set that minimum salary threshold. We're looking at heavy equipment operators in the skilled trade space. We remain interested in kind of welding, plumbing, pipe fitting, the licensed construction trades on that end. In terms of healthcare, very interested in, like, again, I mentioned the 2-year RN program, the LPN program, but then also things like surgical tech, radiology tech. For us, we're pretty wide open, again, as long as the program hits those marks. High performing in terms of graduation and job placement, really strong wages and really strong demand, preferably local North Carolina employers. Yeah, so we were actually fortunate to be invited in from the community college system to sit in front of all of the workforce development heads of all the 58 community colleges and just put out like a pretty preliminary program assessment worksheet that Susie on our team worked on, and have kind of a pretty significant response rate to that of folks waving their hands saying, like, I think this program would be eligible, because we know the need is pretty far reaching.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, again, some of the jobs that you mentioned, like specifically like the law enforcement, and again, I'm like, we're worried about on the back end that law enforcement isn't going to make a wage that's high enough to repay an interest-free loan.
Exactly.
It's just like, what the heck?
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's really what we're grappling with, and that's where too, like, getting in front of the end user, so the employer themselves, is really what I see as kind of the next phase for the Forward Fund. So, let's carry that basic law enforcement example forward. If there was a county or hiring agency that wanted to pay the loan back, that doesn't solve the wage problem in terms of it still not being family sustaining, but for us, it does lower the risk, and that we could potentially do a loan in that instance. If an employer is willing to repay the loan, and then we could recycle that into the next individual behind them, but then hopefully see their wages kind of increase over time. So we're kind of exploring some models in that employer repaid space, but also want to be really cognizant, like, not to lower the bar, because our goal is upward mobility, obviously, at the end of the day.
So how are you guys marketing this program? Like, how do we get the word out there that, hey, this is available for you? Is that through the community colleges, or? Yes.
So CFCC has been a great partner. Our team members have gone to, like, program orientations for CDL truck driving and electric line work. And so we're there kind of at orientation to say, if you're considering this program but don't know how to pay for it, here we are. Those program directors have also been great in that once someone enrolls, they get kind of an automated email from CFCC, and there's information about the Forward Fund included right there. We're linked on their programmatic websites. There's text message reminders, all from CFCC. So that has really been the driver of all of our demand and kind of applicants to date. I mentioned earlier, as we move forward, we would really like to think, like, earlier and earlier in the talent pipeline. So how do we get in front of, again, high school kids that may be graduating and don't have a plan, or aren't going to attend a 4-year university, or maybe even tried a 4-year university but have come back home, like that we are here. And that becomes an easier sell, again, as I mentioned, once we kind of like add additional programs that can speak to a larger audience. I think it takes specific people that want to be that high on a utility pole and in a truck all day. So we're interested in seeing how do we provide more variety down the road.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned when you were starting this up, like how do we find our place in the ecosystem, or like how do we fit in? And the more and more I'm hearing this, it aligns so well with some of the other things that I know that's going on here. Like, the Chamber's doing the Career and Leadership Development Academy, like from 7th grade, and kind of like a funnel through there. The endowment's here to support all things like health and safety and, employment.
Yeah.
And you guys are kind of like almost like set perfectly in that state where, leveraging and working together with some of the other organizations to just like collaborate and be a part of it.
Absolutely. We see ourselves very much like yes and, right? So as I'm talking to funders, particularly those that have been in kind of the education and workforce space for a long time, like, yes, we need you to fund the institutions, in the sense of CFCC needed a pole yard, to kind of build out this program, and they need trucks, and they need the instructors, they need everything they do what they do well, which is education and training.
Right.
And if we can do all of that, people still have barriers to access, and it's largely financial. And so how do we get, as we see ourselves, like just a seat at the table for those types of conversations, that if we continue to kind of build out the infrastructure, but not think about an individual's access or opportunity to take advantage, again, we're going to be stuck in this cycle of poverty, cycle of student debt, no credit bearing options. Like there's just got to be some more players in this space, in my opinion. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
What's it like working with your board right now, and like what type of governance does that look like? What type of reporting?
So early days, we were kind of a subset of Cape Fear Collective's board, and we still have a lot of the same familiar faces, which has been great. They know CFC really well. They know our origin story really well, and I was thankful to work with them for quite some time while I was at Cape Fear Collective. In terms of where we sit now, we're a small board, and it's been great to work with them, particularly kind of this flexibility in early days, and I think openness to thinking differently and going first and trying new things. You need a board that can be flexible in that space and like really ready to I kind of hate the term like disrupt the system, but disrupt the system, if you will. Moving forward, kind of continuing to grow with that board and thinking about kind of impact investment expertise, additional financial expertise, as we certainly grow both programmatically and geographically across the state.
Yeah, so I mean the board is definitely like it's a governance aspect, right? Like we're watching over what's going on here with these funds, but it also sounds like they've been largely helpful in helping develop the business, making connections, and
opening doors, introducing to other funders. I mean, our biggest champions sit on our board. Again, back when this was just an idea, there was like those board members that are there today were kind of behind me and behind the idea, and not only got us to 4 million pretty quickly, but helped with getting us to 7, and I think will continue to be with us as we grow.
Was it difficult to get in with the community colleges? Like, did you have to like convince them and like sell this program, or was it a pretty like, oh yeah, we get this, like, sign us up?
I think like yes and no, right? I mean, the financial aid and student lending space, there's a lot of bad actors. And so we were really cognizant of that going into these conversations, that like we knew we needed to build trust and some legitimacy. And as someone who hadn't done a loan yet, we're really thankful that CFCC and others like took an early start with us, because now I think we've proven Because community colleges and CFCC specifically, like they know their students. They know there's a financial need there. They see this day in, day out when someone can't come to class because the car breaks down or what have you.
Right.
Like the folks we've worked with, they are very close to the folks that are rolling in those cohorts, and they are just as excited at graduation as we are. So it wasn't that. It was more just like, how do we build trust and some understanding around this new model? And then really, it was also important to us that we're not trying to add a burdensome product on top of the work that community colleges are already doing, right? There's a lot to do in student accounts and admission and student success and career counseling, all of that. We did not want to be another thorn in their side. And so thankfully, or I hope they would say, it's pretty low admin on the community college's part once we're up and running. So that takes some training and some, just knowledge sharing between the two organizations. But after that, we hope at the Forward Fund that we're taking on the bulk of kind of the day-to-day, and so that this can just be an added benefit for your students.
Yeah. Well, again, speaking to the scalability of the model that you guys have set up, where using a lot of digitalization, like automated processes, outsourced vendors, and partners, not vendors, but they kind of are, but partners to help support, hopefully reduces the burden on everybody.
Yeah, that is our hope, because I think too, we were also sensitive going into this and still trying to figure out like what does it look like for the Forward Fund to be a lender for our borrowers like in year 3 or 5, right? Right now, we don't have any of those folks in our ecosystem, but I say that to say we're really trying to figure out like, how can we be your lender and partner with organizations to provide some other wraparound support? Like we're cautious to be your lender and your case manager because we do need to get paid back, and there is this kind of banking relationship that again kind of separates us from kind of this case management or nonprofit type space. But we also want to fully leverage this opportunity for individuals. So I think in years 2 and 3 on, we're really interested in like what are the community-based organizations on the ground that are already doing great work around upward economic mobility that maybe we can partner with to provide further supports to our borrowers.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you talked about year 2 and 3. What does year 10 or and beyond look like? What's the goal?
Oh goodness, year 10. I mean, I would be lying if I didn't say statewide by year 10. A lot of program and geographic diversity, and with that, funder diversity, right?
Yep.
So our funders today, rightfully so, are really invested in Eastern North Carolina, and particularly our Cape Fear region, and so that is where we will deploy these dollars. I was just at a convening in Greensboro yesterday, and there's a lot of discussion, obviously still around Hurricane Helene recovery.
Yeah.
And I'm adamant that we can be an economic engine coming out of both for recovery but long-term resiliency in Western North Carolina. So we're curious how we fit in or where we fit in, because enrollments are on the rise and actually never took a dip post-Hurricane Helene in the 14 community colleges in the western part of the state, and they were certainly hubs in terms of immediate recovery, and then I think too long-term economic recovery. So we're interested in those types of partnerships. Again, we see ourselves as a yes and, like how can we be a tool in the toolkit around getting allowing folks, just removing barriers for folks to take advantage of what are already really great high-performing programs in our state.
Yep. I love that goal, statewide.
Yes,
And how many community colleges are 100?
There are 58.
Oh, 58
in the state.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And all with like very, there's some commonality in terms of programs, of course. I want to say there's, a good dozen of the electric line worker programs spread out across the state as an example. But there's also some really niche programs at some of these community colleges that are really embedded in their local community with a local employer. And that, again, I think is where, if there's already kind of really great work happening with those hiring commitments or even work-based learning, even guaranteed job placement, like that for us is kind of a no-brainer in terms of if we can be an additional dollar in someone's pocket to get them through, and then have repayment all but guaranteed.
Yep.
Yeah.
What would you say the biggest constraint is going to be trying to get statewide?
I don't know if it's constraint necessarily, but just awareness, and again, just this, we're a value add, not a replacement. There is, there's a long history of scholarships and grants and other types of financial aid to support students.
Right.
We don't want to change any of that.
Right.
I also have a funder who I believe when she says constantly, like, philanthropy will never be enough to solve this problem. Public dollars alone will never be enough to solve this problem. And so that's where I think, how do we kind of come in and buy with and through the work that's already happening, be laser focused on the individual enrolling in the program.
Yep.
And what they need to get through, and be as flexible as we can in terms of delivering upon that.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So kind of wrapping up here as we get to the end, you've talked a lot about the success of the organization and the amount of people that have been enrolled and the dollars that are out there. What would you say you're most proud of? What's like the biggest accomplishment, or what like you're most proud of with the Forward Fund?
Yeah. Well, one, just the ability to go on parental leave and like come back, and not only is ship sailing, but it's like,
growing.
Yeah, sprinting in a really great way. I would say attending the graduation of the electric line workers back in March. It was also the day we were awarded a grant from Duke Energy Foundation. For me personally and professionally, it was just a very full circle moment. To have worked with Duke Energy, to have worked specifically on that line worker program, to now having our first loan products out the door and having them graduate and walk across the stage. That was probably my best day.
Yeah, that's getting to see it come all the way around, walking across the
and now
stage.
they're in repayment, and more than 75% of our borrowers are on time and current, and
amazing.
Yeah, it's working.
And imagine what that does for their morale. Just like, hey, like
Absolutely.
I did this, I'm doing this, I'm repaying. Like, that's just got to be such a huge boost mentally as well.
Yeah, we hope so, because I do think too, back to our borrower profile and that credit score, like it's likely they haven't had good borrowing relationships in the past, right? And particularly in a time where things are more expensive and they're making choices about what they can and can't afford. Like, I'm really hopeful, and this is again where we kind of see an opportunity to partner with organizations on the ground, that like making the choice to repay the Forward Fund loan not only is going to like do more for their upward mobility, but also help support the person coming behind them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. This was a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. For your time and for your contribution to the community. And,
thank you.
And everything you're doing.
Happy to do it.
Awesome.
Thanks.